On today's episode of the Mark Titus Show, Colorado has left the building. They are going back home to the Big 12. The CU Buffs have taken. They really haven't moved at all. Every time I talk about conference realignment, I just picture the school getting up and leaving. The school, as it turns out, does not move. It stays in the exact same location it was in, but it's now in a new conference. Colorado is going to go to the Big 12. Deion Sanders getting it done. It takes over and immediately has it's incredible what he's done for Colorado football, one of the worst football programs in the country in terms of power conference football programs. But there's buzz around the place now, and Colorado has gone to the Big 12. Another domino falling, and now we're right back in the conference realignment carousel, whatever you want to call it. It's just a whirlwind of rumors, of some more real than others. What are Oregon and Washington going to do? What are Arizona and Arizona State going to do? What is the Pac-9, I guess, is what we have left? What's going on there? Is it even going to be a conference in 5 years? Are they going to backfill with somebody? There is so much going on with the conference the dust is nowhere close to being settled. It is all I know. And that's kind of fun when you want to speculate. It's not so much fun when you just want to watch sports and you're just throw the teams out on the field. Why the hell are we still talking about all these teams jumping around? But anyway, Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic is in studio today to talk about all this. She covers college football for The Athletic, not only covers college football, but covers conference realignment, is well sourced with all these commissioners and ADs and administrators and all that sort of thing. So she's a friend of mine as well, and I thought having her on the show would be great because that seems to be the news in college sports right now. And as she and I talked, college basketball is just sort of along for the ride with this stuff, which is, I don't know, not fun. It's just not fun. That's the way I would describe it. It's not fun to be a fan of a sport that has no say in any of this sort of thing. And if I don't mean to suggest that the Colorado-Washington State basketball rivalry was sacred. Now I'm devastated that it's gone away. But, it's less about Colorado jumping in the Big 12 and more about this era we're in where, there are rumors of UConn joining the Big 12, which would actually be devastating. And I probably would cry if that happened, even though the Big 12 would be an absolute juggernaut of a basketball. That's what, if the Big 12 adds Arizona and UConn, oh my God. Can you imagine that basketball conference? It would be insane. It would be absolutely insane. But UConn's got to stay in the Big East. Anyway, Nicole knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I brought her on the show. We talked for about an hour about all sorts of stuff, conference realignment, and I threw some scenarios at her that may or may not be plausible, and we talked those out. It was a fun conversation, even though she went to Michigan. It was cool that she could keep up with the conversation a little bit. I tried to talk a little slower for her so she could understand what I was saying, and I think she did. I think she picked up on it. I think she did. No, I'm kidding. Nicole's the best, and we had a fun conversation about conference realignment. So that is today's show. Please enjoy. All right, Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic is joining me. She's a college football writer, for those who don't know, which these days, Nicole, I assume means you're more of a realignment expert.
Yes.
How much are you when you sit down to plan out what you're covering? I guess you don't really plan on it, but how much of your day is consumed by realignment talk, just in general? How many people that want to reach out to you, stories you're working on, scoops you're getting, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's pretty much 90% realignment. It's funny, if you had said, "Hey, when's the last time you worked on a straight football story?"
Yeah.
Might take a minute to remember. And also in season, I'm oh, I can't wait until we get to football. A realignment's probably going to spill into it.
Yeah.
It probably isn't time for it. We did a Big Ten Media Day preview pod. I was with Ari Wasserman, and we talked about the teams, and it took a second to study up and be okay, what does Penn State's too deep look like? Because this has just been all NIL and realignment. Right. So, but yeah, right these days it's that's all the calls.
Yeah. So I see the news. Colorado is going to the Big 12, back to the Big 12, we should say. My immediate thought was I got to talk about this on the show. You're the first name I thought of because you cover this stuff so much, and I'm more of a basketball guy, as you know. You're a football person. You cover football. I don't know. We don't need to put it in boxes, but you know what I'm saying.
I can be a football guy.
Yeah, football guy. And football drives all of this, obviously. So, like, for those of us in the basketball world, we're just kind of like it's a very weird position because unlike all the rest of the sports, men's basketball makes money for these schools, and yet men's basketball is the one sport that like makes money, but also has no say pretty much in what's going on with the realignment. So it's like very bizarre. Which is to say, I'm following it closely, but you're probably more in the weeds than me. So I thought I got to get Nicole on the show to kind of explain to my listeners what the hell is going on, because a lot of the reaction with basketball stuff is like a lot of the feeling with basketball is reactionary. It's like, what the hell just happened? Like, what we don't really. The basketball people are too stupid to see what's on the horizon and the pieces that are moving because we don't think of things in football terms. So I reached out to you and I was like, Nicole, do you want to come on the show and talk realignment? And I think one of the first things you said was like, I hate realignment so much. And I was like, oh no. So we don't need to spend too much time, but I do want I want more clarity both for myself and the listeners because Colorado going back to the Big 12 both feels like it feels like it might be the death of the Pac-8, 9. How many are left at this point? Nine left
right now. Yep.
But as you pointed out right before we jumped on air, Dan Lanning, the Oregon football coach, was like, this doesn't matter at all because Colorado wins nothing. So like, does this really? So I guess we'll start there. Like with the Pac-9, the Pac-12, whatever they're calling it. Is it dead? Do we feel like as of right this second, as the calendar is turning to August 2023, that the Pac-12 as we know it is officially dead, or is there a way that they can salvage this thing?
Okay, so when I talk about these things, always need to timestamp it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
By the time someone is listening. So it's like late in the day, July 31st.
July 31st.
Day, right?
It is 3 on the dot Central Time.
3 on the dot Central Time. So like the Pac-12 has a meeting on the 1st. We'll see, right? About George Kliavkoff's supposed to present a deal. So we'll see, actually, hopefully soon, if it stabilizes or not. I mean, there was all this power vacuum or information vacuum basically since last fall, and Pac-12 was doing a media deal. Maybe it would be in January, then it would be, maybe by their conference tournament and then media days. And now here we are and it's August. But there was always a hope that, whatever the deal was, it would be fine. It would be comparable to Big 12, wouldn't be enough to make someone jump, and it would keep people together because they'd be willing to sign their own grant of rights for, let's say, a 5 or 6 year deal. And then we all kind of move on and exist for a few years until the Big Ten's next deal is up or something, and this gets going again. Colorado jumped, right? They went early. They didn't wait for the deal to formally be presented. And the way that they justified that was they just said, it's more stable. We know what they're doing. They also were in that league for a long time. That one fundamentally didn't feel as bad as some of the other moves that have happened that just really reek of chasing money or chasing the biggest possible league you could join. Deion also wanted to be back in a footprint that had Texas and all these different... Kind of crazy to have a coach who has not coached a game have
so much influence
in a conference decision like this. But the reaction has been exactly one of the two, right? So Dan Lanning's comments, I think, are very interesting and telling because I already think a lot of the coaches in this league were annoyed about everything around Deion, the way that he flipped over his roster, the amount of attention they were getting. So I always kind of thought that people might run up the score on Colorado if that opportunity presented itself. Well, guess who's playing Colorado in the first month of the season? Oregon. So I think we can safely expect that. But I think that was one of the things that I thought about too was, of all Power 5 programs to add, I mean, historically in football, men's basketball, they have been among the worst in recent years. But the Big 12 has done a really good job of selling this as a big win for them. And part of that is because they're trying to destabilize the Pac-12.
Yeah. So is the selling point, I guess, just nostalgia? Is it because I fell into it too. I was like, oh my God, Colorado back in the Big 12. And then I sat on it for a while. I was like, doesn't Colorado stink? I mean, Deion does. It's wild because I really think if Deion stepped down today and was like, I'm done. Thank you so much to Boulder and everybody. It was great. My time here, the 4 months I was the head coach. God bless you all, but I'm moving on. I think Colorado fans would be like, he's one of the best coaches we've ever had in the history of the program.
All of the positivity.
Yeah, absolutely. The hype, they moved to the Big 12, all the things that he's knocked it out of the park, and he hasn't even coached a game. Now, of course, you start stacking up L's the conversation's different. But it's just crazy, to your point, like the hype around Deion and all of that is like it is working.
But the hype, like, to me, Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, ran this as a campaign against the Pac-12. You never hear him talking about the Big Ten and the SEC this, or even the ACC, right? It's their positioning and they presenting themselves as stronger than the Pac-12. So when he talks about wanting to go west, when he talks about believing that they can get Power 5 schools, we all know what he's talking about. And so I think plucking a Power 5 school from another, someone that was in your league previously, that does have the flashy coach, and things of that nature, but they were also the most receptive. Like early on, we were talking about the 4 corner schools. So that's Colorado, Utah, Arizona State. Well, Colorado was the most receptive and interested. And like my colleague Max Olson always puts it this way, like Brett Yormark, he flirts with these schools. And they flirted back. And then obviously they were ready to like, take the rose and go forward. But that was also part of the reason that like Colorado became this like big win for them, is because for months now, they were the most likely candidate to actually say yes.
And why are my read on it, and you can shoot this down if it's completely not accurate, but it feels to me like Oregon and Washington, who seem to sort of be a package deal the way I'm reading the tea leaves, but it seems like them, and I don't know if the Arizona schools, whatever, but it feels like maybe some of these other Pac-12 schools are kind of waiting for the Big Ten. They're just like, we don't want to accept we would love to flirt with you, but we're holding out that there's going to be a spot open in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's like, we're not really interested right now.
Right.
Is that what seems to be going on? Like the Big Ten's like
a fair read on the situation. I also think that, there's a rich history in the Pac-12, Pac-10, whatever you want to call it, Pac-9 right now. And there's also inertia. And so like you don't try to leave, you don't try to uproot things. And those schools in the Pac-12, you're a Big Ten guy, I'm a Big Ten guy too. And like we hear so much of like the arrogance about like the schools and like the academics and like, right, and the AAU status and like all of these things. Well, the academic schools in the Pac-12 are also great.
Yes.
And so there is something for like Arizona State, who's rising up the ranks in that, to be associated with Cal and Stanford and those things.
Sure.
So like there is a lot of like-mindedness and a lot of the reasons that like conferences do exist in that. But yeah, I mean, if you're Oregon or Washington, and again, let's say the Pac-12 is fine, stabilizes, gets a deal, maybe they backfill with San Diego State or SMU or whatever it needs to be. If you're Oregon, why wouldn't you just stay and win the Pac-12 and go to the playoff every year, right? Instead of uprooting to go to the Big 12. And then, yes, maybe you're hoping down the line the Big 10 does expand and calls you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess Colorado not being like one of the OG Pac, it does make sense. They're going back home, but then also like sort of the respect that you just said that like these other schools have for the entity that is the Pac 8, 10, 12. Maybe Colorado doesn't feel that as much because they've been there for 10 years basically anyway. So they're just like, whatever. I'm just fascinated that it just blows my mind. Having lived on the West Coast for the last 4 or 5 years, however long I was out in Los Angeles, Saturday morning, college football's on my television. I want to go hit up a bar. Just how difficult it was to get people to watch college basketball, especially. And I thought like with UCLA and USC, living in a city with those two schools, I thought this would be very simple to find college sports on televisions and bars. That was not the case. So like I sit here and look at the current state of the Pac-9, and I think, how in God's name did a conference that had 2 Los Angeles schools, you have a footprint in Phoenix with Arizona State, the Phoenix market. You got the Denver market with Colorado. You got the Seattle market. I guess the Portland market technically. I guess Oregon being close enough to, I'd have to check my geography a little bit more, but like Portland or Oregon.
Yeah, you
Oregon State is like, it just kind of blends all together. But the point is like outside of Vegas, basically every the Bay Area, which I just skipped over, how does a conference that has all of these massive West Coast footprints get to this point where like you can't even get a TV deal? Is it as simple as what I think a lot of East Coast people think, which is that do people on the West Coast just not care? Is that like ultimately what it comes down to? Because to have like that many massive media markets involved in this stuff, and they're still like struggling to put a deal together, and just like we're sitting here today like unsure if even in 5 years there will be a Pac-12 is pretty freaking wild to me.
So I think the first part, which is kind of like a backwards way of answering your question, is the timing for the Pac-12 to go through this was terrible. This was part of the like looking hindsight is 2020, Brett Yormark did like read the tea leaves probably on this, but he also jumped ahead and the Big 12 got their extension done before everything really got bad and before all of the layoffs and all of these media companies, including Apple and Amazon and all these places that people thought would be around and would be interested and could drive up the value and the prices for different things. So it's definitely not ideal. And I mean, you could still end up with a deal. Like ESPN is still going to do media rights deals, but they were going through massive layoffs. And so that impacts deals, negotiations, processes, and these Amazon and Apple's, from what I've been told, like it just goes a lot slower. They're not as comfortable. They don't know what they're doing as much. Okay. So it's just a different process. But to your original point, I do think that is part of the problem. Like I remember, like I live in Chicago now, but I was in DC, I was in New York, I grew up in New Jersey. And when I lived in those places, I did not stay up to watch the Pac-12 games.
Right.
Like I was not as familiar with UCLA and Oregon basketball when they started to rise under Dana Altman, and like I just didn't make it a priority. And I've had this conversation so many times with like Gonzaga folks. Because and it's part of the reason they do their non-conference scheduling the way they do, so that people can see them. But it's a real thing. East Coast bias is a real thing. And I also think, and you could speak to this more having lived in LA especially, the culture around like going to games or planning around watching a game is very different. It's
crazy. I went to my first UCLA basketball game and I said I will never make jokes about how fans don't come because being in the Midwest, I have such an unbelievable reverence for UCLA basketball, the brand, and Pauley Pavilion is one of the great arenas in our sport, and everything about it would drive me nuts when I'd watch UCLA games and like the Lonzo Ball team, it was like so freaking fun and the place would be empty and I'm like, what is wrong with these people? And then I moved to Los Angeles. I went to my first UCLA basketball game and I was like, never mind. And the reason I was never mind was sitting in the traffic, just really the traffic. It was basically just the traffic. But the games are tipped like to get a good TV slot. If you have a team that's ranked number 1 in the country or number 5, whatever, you're playing at 6 p.m. maybe because it's a 9 Eastern tip off, which is super inconvenient for people if they have real jobs. So the whole thing was like I suddenly get it now. I just don't know if you have a world where like the East Coast doesn't care about the West Coast and now the West Coast we're unsure about how much the West Coast even cares about the West Coast. It's just crazy to me. Like I guess college sports on the West Coast as a whole, like if the Pac-9 dissolves, which that's the assumption I'm working with, by the way, is like I just think like I see the writing on the wall. I think Oregon and Washington are gonna jump at some point somewhere. Arizona and Arizona State won out. Like it just feels like too many teams won out and are like flirting too much. So I'll say that. You don't have to agree with it or anything, but that's just my read on the whole thing. If that in fact happens, like in 5-10 years, college sports on the West Coast, do you think it's in a more healthy spot? Or like do you think the odds of being able to find a college football game on a bar on a Saturday will be better or worse now that UCLA and USC are playing in a quote unquote real college sports conference, and maybe you get Washington and Oregon also? Like will there be more, and maybe, and I should say, by the way, for those of you who live in like Eugene, who are pulling your hair out and you're like, in Eugene we don't have this problem, that's an LA problem. This might be an LA problem. Everything I'm saying might just be like people in LA don't care, but like other people in the West Coast
is also
they probably have the same deal. But do you
it's just what you're saying is like it's just different than like living in Alabama or Georgia. Like even in Atlanta, if you live in Atlanta, it's a college football area. Like the Falcons fandom is the hot and cold one, right? Like there's just different places and different, like I grew up in New Jersey, pro sports. Right. Rutgers was really, really good. The Ray Rice team, the Mike Teal team. We didn't go to a game. We actually did schedule a couple nights and watched like them play West Virginia and stuff, but we did not think to go 20 minutes down the road to the game because that just wasn't part of the culture there. But here's another thing. So you're saying like, okay, well, maybe people will watch USC and UCLA because they'll be on Fox and they'll be like on NBC and CBS, like that deal, right? Yeah. Part of the thing was it'll be the easiest way, the most amount of viewers. But part of the reason that like if you're ESPN or whoever, you want a Pac-12 contract is to fill the late night slots. Right. But then you have to play the late night slots. And people on the West Coast would prefer to go to games earlier. They don't want to do the night game thing that you can easily sell, to LSU fans. Like that they embrace that, and that's part of what they want out of college sports. So that's where this is such a regional sport and sports world, and it's so hard because these things are not universal. What works here doesn't work there.
And the regional part, obviously, as has been pointed out 10 million times, the regional part going away, I think, is what makes this round of realignment so visceral to people.
Yeah.
I think because it is kind of weird that college fans are losing their minds about realignment when this has been constant in college sports. There's been teams jumping all over. I mean, I grew up. It's funny because I noticed this about myself. I'm I can't believe the Big Ten is adding all these teams, and this is crazy. Can't we just go back to the Big Ten I know, which is 11 teams? That was the Big Ten I grew up with. It was 11 teams, which then
the original number. They're just not going to change it.
Yeah, you hear yourself say that out loud, and you're like, wait a second. I guess that because when Penn State joined the Big Ten, so the point is this has been going on forever, but for some reason this round, and I classify this round as I'm sure you do, which is Texas and Oklahoma jumping in the SEC, then kind of started all
this. And now we're in year 3 of this.
This round feels so much more visceral, where people are just this is fucking ridiculous, the money grab, even though it's been going on forever. And I think, would you agree that it's because of the regional part of it is we're all fine with expansion, Arkansas going to the SEC or Missouri going to the SEC. That all makes sense in our head because you can still see it on a map. And even Texas and Oklahoma, when it was announced, I was I guess that sort of makes sense. It's close enough there on the map. But then USC, UCLA just open these floodgates where you're oh, okay. So now there's no such thing as regional anything anymore. It's just a free for all out there. Is that how you feel? Do you feel first of all, do you feel there's more of a intense reaction this time around? Yeah,
I do.
And is that probably why?
Yeah, I think people have been. I think because it was also coupled with NIL, also coupled with you have all these lawsuits. We have to talk about the Supreme Court. You have to talk about all these other things that are happening. The transfer portal's loosened.
And it just feels like a lot
is happening at one time. And it is all change. And so a lot of the purists, even if you just wanted the rivals and you actually support the players putting some money in their pocket or being able to transfer because coaches transfer, there's still a lot of people who don't like any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Who just have this reaction to how it used to be.
Yeah, right.
They want college football to be 1980 forever. And those people do exist. But I even think that it's just all of it happening at one time. It's just so constant. And then you see, wow, this conference that used to be Midwest, you used to think Midwest when you thought the Big Ten.
Right.
And then, okay, well, we get this week about USC and UCLA is the logistics, what are they thinking about? What are they talking about? And how are they having the Big Ten try to help them limit? They know the trips are going to happen. They actually said it's about the same number of trips as it would have been, but they're just longer distances. So what do you do for sleep and nutrition? Do you stay on the West Coast time? Do you stay on East Coast time? How do you do this? You bring more trainers or academic advisors onto trips. How do you do all this stuff? And one of the things that people reacted to was, I give them an example of okay, maybe you have UCLA, soccer and USC, volleyball, and you pair them as travel buddies for a weekend, and they do Northwestern and Illinois, but they play at Illinois first, then they can bus, and then they finish at Northwestern, so then they can take a flight out of O'Hare. So you're gonna have to think about all these puzzle pieces, and everyone's just what? What? How is this what college sports is,
right,
or what it's supposed to be? But that's just people making the best out of where it is now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's evolved into this thing where geography doesn't matter. And the money, I think, too, everyone has seen the payouts and they see what the differences are. I have been doing radio all off season, and I don't think we've got a whole show without talking about the Pac-12 media rights deal, which 5 years ago, no one paid attention
Nobody
to media
cared.
rights
Yeah.
deals. 10 years ago, no. But it's everyone is so worried about falling behind, being left out, being the last one standing, and now not making enough money. And then, everyone's going to steal your coaches, and it'll funnel into NIL collectives, and they'll get the best players. I don't think that stuff was part of the college sports fan experience 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that too. It's just I never thought that when I decided I just wanted to talk shit about college basketball for a living, I never thought that I would be all right, so if Kansas can, if the Big Ten gets Kansas somehow, and that leaves us like this is what the job has become.
You're also a grant of rights expert, I assume.
I'm a grant of rights. Yes, I am a grant of rights expert. I'm an expert. Let's talk about the ACC a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about the grants of rights. What do they call themselves? Magnificent Seven? Terrible nickname.
So
who came up with this nickname? How do I?
They did not. That was Brett McMurphy made up the nickname.
McMurphy. All right.
Yes.
Brett McMurphy.
But he put it in quotes, so people thought that was someone had named themselves that. But I was texting people. I was like, "Did you seriously call yourselves this?" They were like, "No."
I definitely read that. Thought like that these guys got together, and one of the first items on the agenda was like, "We need a name.
Yeah.
We need a name for ourselves."
No.
And someone stood up and said Magnificent Seven. But the 7 schools that were reported to be like kicking the tires on figuring out how to get the hell out of the ACC, nothing's really come of that yet. Explain to the people what exactly is the grant of rights, because it feels like we've gone from like this is ironclad, shut it down, this can't happen. I know people want to fantasize about Clemson or Florida State jumping to the SEC, maybe whatever. But that can't happen because these grant of rights it just simply can't happen. And then there was like a wave of people that are like, now hang on a second, you get lawyers involved, anything could happen. But then nothing has happened. So like where on the, I guess just like I'm not asking like, do we think that schools are going to jump around? I'm specifically just asking about the grant of rights of like, is it a possibility at all? Are we wasting our time? Guys like me that are ill-informed being like, I want Carolina in the Big Ten. Is like even saying that a waste of time right now?
I don't think so. I mean, I think everyone can have these conversations because like all the administrators I talk to have those conversations.
Oh yeah,
commissioners, ADs, like everyone says the same stuff anyway. But the point that I always go back to from someone who is in one of those 7 schools told me was, hey, if this was easy or straightforward to get out of, we would have all done it the day after Texas and OU went to the SEC. Wow. So we're 2+ years beyond that, and no one's challenged it yet. So everyone's got their lawyers looking at it. Basically, what a grant of rights does is it tethers everyone to each other. So you sign a media rights deal, but then you're also essentially signing, this was all after Maryland left, right? So everyone's trying to figure out like how do you stop somebody from blindsiding you, and how do you make it like really expensive if someone tries to leave, but also hard to leave. So the idea is, okay, well, Mark, you and I, we are in a league. We just sold our rights to Apple, and we signed a 5-year deal. Well, then also during that 5-year deal, we signed a grant of rights that goes the length of that contract, which means that if we leave, our conference NM has the rights to our home games. So we could leave and we could pay an exit fee, but then no one could see our games.
Or do you have to pay then? Like you'd have to pay. So yeah, say that. So like,
okay,
if Clemson, I'll throw out the hypothetical, so you don't get in trouble. If Clemson leaves today and joins the SEC, and they're like, we want to play SEC football next year.
Yeah, if they did not deal with their grant of rights, so they would need. This is why like it's hard to get a dollar figure. So there's the difference was an exit fee, which is like what you would owe the ACC.
Yeah.
But then there's the grant of rights. So until 2036, all those schools' rights are owned by the ACC. So Clemson home games, the ACC owns Clemson home games.
So when they would play at home, all the money would go to the ACC still. So they would basically still, or the ACC.
No one would see it.
No one was, because the ACC would have to do the rights for the TV.
So, or like, just think of it that way.
So just no one would see it. Yeah, okay,
so
that makes more sense.
you have to buy your rights back.
I got you.
So that you could be like, hey, we're playing Florida, and you can watch it this way.
So when Maryland left, all the ACC schools were like, we have a genius idea to make sure no one else leaves. But then now they all want to leave.
Schools have this stuff. Yeah. Right.
Now they all want to leave. They're like, fuck.
Right. And the ACC is particularly like the reason we talk about it so much is because they had the long-term deal. Yeah. They signed a 20-year deal in 2016. So that's a really long time. Like right now they're fine. They're actually in pretty good shape. But everyone's seen all the charts and everyone else's numbers go up. And then you have Florida State, and their athletic director gets in front of his board and says, we can't fall $30 million behind Florida every year, over and over and over again. So that's where you have this. So there's like a couple of different things that are different with the ACC teams, like an FSU or a Clemson. They can give the league notice to leave. Like they can say, hey, ACC, we're out. So that's why if you hear an August 15th deadline, that's because like FSU would need to tell the ACC that they were leaving by August 15th to be able to be somewhere else next year. But that's not to say, then they would need to figure out what do they owe the exit fee, and then maybe you have to go to court or something to figure out what you owe for the grant of rights to get your rights back. So it's incredibly expensive. But the bet would be we would make more money in the new league, that this would be worth it,
right? Because
we can't fall behind this much.
Right. And the 7, my understanding was that the whole 7 came about because if 7 schools were to jump all at the same time, the grant of rights goes away. What,
I think
is
it
that? Is that
8?
It has to be 8.
I'm pretty sure. So again, this depends on who you talk to, like exactly how this would have to work. But if enough of the league broke out that it like was no longer a league, and I think that's over 50%, which is why it would be 8 versus 7.
Yeah. Okay.
Then yes, there wouldn't be the grant of rights payment. So that would be the thinking, but that's a big ask still. Like you're still like, we know, Florida State and Clemson, they've been loud, right, about we deserve more money, and they would be betting on themselves. But if you're like North Carolina State or Virginia Tech, are you sure that there's a spot? That's the hard part. Or even, if someone goes first and says like, okay, we're leaving the ACC, you're still waiting for 7 other people to say, yeah, me too. Like that's just a lot. So
I would be
risky.
If I was one of those 8, I would not jump. I would tell everybody 1, 2, 3 jump. Let everyone else, let like 7 jump. Then all 7 of those schools are fucked, and now they're not on television. They get no resources, and they're out of the ACC. And then I think this is how Miami comes back, Nicole. I think this is Miami football. Miami's like team number 8. That's like, yes, we will jump with you guys. Everybody ready? Let's jump. Let all the other 7 jump. Get Clemson out of the way. Get Florida State out of the way.
They can't see them.
Yeah, they'd be like, whatever.
They're going to pay a lot of money, and then you get to be the.
And now you're the king of the ACC. Yes, and now you're the best. And now you run the ACC.
So
it's a foolproof plan.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I understand why people talk about where the ACC schools could fit, because again, you talk to people in the Big Ten or the SEC, and they're like, this would be a good fit. This would be a type of school that we would want, right? Or with the Big Ten and everyone's talking about Oregon and Washington all last year. Well, maybe no, and you wait and see what happens with the ACC, right? Like these are conversations that people have. But my thinking on the grant of rights is, again, a lot of lawyers have looked at this thing. And until someone challenges it, I just consider them unavailable.
Yeah.
But if someone challenges it and we see a dollar figure, we see how this works, then it's a different world.
And yeah, I'm so curious who's going to be the one to challenge it. Like how that's going to, is that going to have to be a group effort, or is there just going to be one? Is it Clemson, or I keep going back to Clemson and Florida State because they seem to be the 2 that are the best football programs right now, or I don't know.
Well, Florida State's got a board meeting this week, so we might have
really? Yeah, we might get that announcement soon.
We might get some information.
We might we might learn a lot there. What do you personally because like as much as I hate realignment as well, like I said, I keep saying I want to go back to when things made sense and the Big Ten had 11 teams. That's the world I want to live in. And the Big 12 has 10 teams, and like everything makes perfect sense in that world. So I like to fantasize, and what we just said about the ACC, like of course I sit there and I look at the ACC teams and I'm like, Virginia, yes, you're Big Ten. North Carolina, Big Ten. Clemson, you're SEC, get out of here. And I'm doing all this as well. What do you personally, like, what is your dream, since we're here and realignment is happening? Is there anything that, like, I know you're a big J, so you don't really root for things, but is there anything where you're like, that would be kind of cool if this happened? That this is on the horizon, like this is actually plausible, and if this actually happened, I wouldn't hate it. So
I had to do these like educated guess, bold prediction things for The Athletic, like 5 realignment scenarios for 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. So some of them, like, I talked them out with like real administrators and like real people like who think about this stuff. So one was like, you'd have a tier like 1A for like people at the highest level of college football who are paying athletes, like, and their salaries, and it's whatever. And then there's like 1B for people who like aren't willing to do that or just don't believe in it. And so like I gamed out a lot of different scenarios, and one was like a Big 3. And so it's the Big 10, the SEC, and then the best of the rest is like the third big league. One thing that I would actually love to see eventually, which would take a lot of steps to get there, would be like a regionalization of everything. So maybe footballs just get pulled out separately. So maybe the CFP runs football or whatever it is. Like, that's just separate. And every other sport, everyone just pools the resources or the rights and just say, okay, let's just go back to what makes sense. Like, you get to play all your rivals. Like, all the Northeast schools are in a league together, so that you have all your rivals and you don't have to get on the plane as much. And it just makes sense. Like, we'll just start it over from scratch and just do things that actually make geographical sense, so that you actually either renew a rivalry or redevelop one, because these are your neighbors and these are the people that you see all the time. And I would love to see that in all sports. Like, there was a period in COVID where like people were getting rid of like non-conference schedules or like adjusting and stuff in like soccer, and they were like, we're just gonna play the teams near us so that we don't have to fly and like save money. I was like, why don't we do this the whole time? Like, why are we doing this? And I get why we've gone to this point, but we literally are talking about a world where like USC soccer is going to be playing Rutgers soccer. We don't have to do that. Pull football. Football's the easiest one to schedule. They have one game a week for 12 weeks, and then everyone else play like what makes sense regionally. It would have to take so many different steps to get to that, but I would love something like that to happen eventually.
Doesn't that already sort of happen with some sports? Like, am I crazy, or is like because Notre Dame is in the ACC and some stuff, right? But not
everything but football.
But football.
Yeah, but I'm saying like they're like the one-off. They're the exception. I'm saying, like, if you pull football out of everybody, then divvy it back up into ways that make sense for all the other sports, that would be great.
I completely.
I mean, there's some small pockets of this, right? Like, we were joking about this before we started, but like the Big East deciding we're going to be a basketball league, we're going to prioritize this. We are geographically, a lot of those schools very geographically tied to each other. So it does exist in smaller examples, but I would just love to see that across the board. Like, why do you have, the American and CUSA that are just like kind of like random states across the country? Just play more regionally. I completely agree. Quick break to talk about our friends at AllAthlete. It is no secret that college coaches are great scouters. They're great recruiters. But they do get things wrong. They do miss out on guys. They let things go through the cracks. They can't be everywhere. They can't know about every single player across the country. It's just impossible. And time again, this is part of the reason I love college sports. Time and time again, you'll turn on your TV, you'll see a guy who's All-American type caliber. Maybe he's not even that good, but he's still a really solid starter at one of these nationally ranked schools. And they tell his story, and they say this guy had to go to a junior college, or this guy had to go take a weird path to get here because he wasn't quite recruited enough coming out of high school. Those days should be gone, because AllAthlete is here to change that. My friend Greg, who was a member of Michigan football's recruiting staff, which I don't know if he was responsible. TJ, did you see that spread, the Michigan football? I meant to say something to Nicole about this. The spread the Michigan football put out for their recruits. I wonder. I gotta hit up Greg and ask him when he was on the recruiting staff if that's what they were serving cold chicken fingers and plain hot dogs. But Greg saw how the whole recruiting system was missing out on millions of athletes, and because of this, he created AllAthlete, a platform that connects overlooked student athletes with college sports programs across all sports. Showcase your entire athletic resume, such as highlights, verified stats, achievements, with insights from top college coaches like none other than Duke's own Jon Scheyer, who is still Duke's coach, by the way. Despite the videos of Coach K showing up at every practice and speaking to the team, Jon Scheyer is, in fact, still Duke's head coach. With over 125,000 athletes on AllAthlete, recruiters can find talent by location, sport, position, and much more. AllAthlete has already connected thousands of athletes to top college programs, leading to hundreds of offers, visits, and scholarships. Turn your D1 sports dream into reality with AllAthlete. Join now at allathlete.vip/mark and unlock your potential. I'm going to answer my own question. I want Notre Dame in the Big Ten. I do. And I hate Notre Dame. I hate Notre Dame. I'll say it again. I hate Notre Dame. Football, I should say. Micah Shrewsbury, very excited about. Love Notre Dame basketball. Notre Dame football, coached by a Buckeye, and I still hate him, Nicole. I'm sorry. So you like Notre Dame? No, I actually, if I wasn't clear, I hate Notre Dame. But they and the Notre Dame and the Big Ten have been flirting for decades, and it's like a. I'm glad that you're going to steal this terminology about flirting and realignment. I'm going to just keep saying flirting. It's the perfect word. I'm going to keep saying it. But
But they've been making eyes at each other for decades, and like both of them think that they're too big for the other, but they both kind of want each other, and it's just this whole. And I think like the cool guy approach to this, if you're a Big Ten fan, is to be like, we don't need Notre Dame. We got USC and UCLA, and we're gonna get these. We need Notre Dame. We need like it just like, what are we doing? What is everybody doing? Why is Notre Dame not in the Big Ten? Why? So here's my plan to get Notre Dame in the Big Ten, and you tell me if this is plausible whatsoever. I think there's a world where the Big Ten gets so bloated, and we might be there already, but the Big Ten has so many schools that eventually, like, you kind of, and this might happen with the SEC too, but my plan is that like the Big 12, SEC, Big Ten gets so big that you almost can't play non-conference anymore. Maybe you get like one game in, but like now the Big Ten's like, if we have 40 teams,
you're onto something here.
If we have 40 teams, why are we allowing like we should have
all league games? Yeah,
we should have all league games. That drives up TV, that gets everybody excited, all sorts, and the SEC does the same. And long story short, Notre Dame's going to wake up and have a world where no one plays them because they can't play any of the good. No SEC school schedule them, no Big Ten school schedule them, no Big 12 school schedule them, and now they have to jump in one of these lifeboats. So I'm saying everyone sees this coming. Why doesn't Notre Dame just get in the Big Ten right now? Because I want to beat Notre Dame's brains in every single year.
Okay, so I actually think you're onto something because my two main things, I guess there's three things for Notre Dame to stay independent. One is to make enough money that you're in the ballpark of the others. You don't need to be making the same amount of money because they would make more money in the ACC than they do right now. And they're expecting, like, NBC will probably give them what they need to be independent, right, in their next negotiations. But it would be more if they were in the Big Ten. But if they're in the ballpark, that's one. Number two, access to the national championship, which, as we all know, their athletic director was on the working group that came up with the 12-team playoff. They can make this thing every year. There's 6 at-large spots.
That's so disgusting.
No conference championship required.
That's so
stupid. They got access every single year. You remember everyone made such a big deal. They were like, oh my God, they can never get a first-round bye. I was like, dude, they game the system. This is a perfect scenario.
That's
they can
insane.
Only ever host games, basically,
That's insane.
in the playoff. So they have access to the championship. The third thing is scheduling who they want when they want. So people bend around their schedules to make this happen, right? For them to finish the season at USC or to play Michigan or Michigan State or whoever that they want to. They always play a lot of Big Ten teams, the ACC teams, and the partial scheduling. But if they couldn't, because everybody else played all league games or almost all league games, and squeeze them from that standpoint where they can't play that national schedule that they want to, that is really valuable to them, that is one way that something changes. But again, I don't see these three things changing right now. It was a good idea.
That's what I want to happen.
I think that is the path that ultimately gets you there. But they're really adamant. They're very stubborn on this.
I'm really sad about the ACC because I'm a basketball guy and but it feels like the ACC is like the second. But maybe not even the second. It feels like the ACC's clock is ticking. The Pac-12 to me is kind of already dead, and it's just it doesn't realize it yet. You think
I've got an ACC question for you.
Go ahead.
As a basketball guy, can the ACC be good at football and basketball at the same time? Like, can they lean into the football drives everything, which they've been trying to do, but also still be good at basketball because they've only been sending like 5 teams in the tournament.
They haven't been great at basketball lately. Yeah. It feels like they're just having like an identity crisis right now where they've been that's been the whole brand of the conference. It's been basketball. And then a couple years ago, someone tapped the ACC on the shoulder and was like, "Hey, by the way, you should probably get your football in line if you're going to survive." And they're like, "What?" And now they're panicking. No, I don't think so. I think the ACC, like kind of what the Big East is doing, but the problem, like the Big East, it is so cool that the Big East does not have football, and the Big East is just like we're a conference of basketball schools. I wanted the ACC to be like the power, like we do have football, but we just don't give a shit about it as much. But obviously the money says otherwise. But I just don't see a world where like you can survive this identity crisis. And I guess like my best case scenario for the ACC best case scenario is that none of this ever happened, but we're here. I think the ACC is going to get poached by the Big Ten and the SEC, and then I think the scraps. I think the best case scenario is like the private schools, your Syracuses, your Dukes, your Wake Forests, that are all like great basketball programs. I think they end up in the Big East. That would be fucking awesome to me.
Syracuse back in the Big East.
Syracuse back in the Big East. Duke in the Big East as well. Because nobody wants Duke, right? Does anybody want Duke?
Well, so this is what is also like, we're talking about like reasons we hate realignment and reasons that like there's a visceral reaction to this round in particular. If you game this stuff out and the ACC does break open and North Carolina does get poached somewhere, like Duke and Carolina are separating. They're not in the same league. Like that sucks. That's not what people get into and love college sports, to not have those two in the same league. They're 8 miles apart.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want. And so that's where I think like, even if it hasn't happened or maybe doesn't happen, but even just the idea of thinking about it, that's where people get upset about this stuff.
But is Duke attractive whatsoever?
I don't think they're... So we had the same conversation about Kansas, right?
Yeah.
In like 21 after OU and Texas leave. These basketball schools, basketball powers, like that's awesome. That brings in money. Yeah. But it's not the driver. It doesn't drive the decision.
Kansas is at least a state school. So if you want to make that argument that there's like a huge state... I don't know but like there's like a alumni base within this state that you're like trying to, but I guess like in 2023 we don't think that way anymore. I got Jim Delaney brain of like, let's get Rutgers to get the New York market.
Right. Yeah. You don't need it for like the cable.
You don't need the Kansas City market. Yeah.
Right. And it's just also like the numbers that these schools need to hit to justify adding them. Like I always think about it that way, where it's like, okay, $60 million, $70 million a year. These schools are getting paid out. So is Duke bringing $70 million worth of revenue per year?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
It's Kansas. Like, if it's basketball or basketball's the driver, it's not.
But this is why we need to implement your idea, which is like just let football. If football is going to be running all this, then like go take your drama somewhere else. Football. Well, it's kind of how the rest of the sports are like.
And there's a lot of people that would love to, like, again, no one wants to run it, and like even if the CFP, let's say them or someone equivalent decides to do it, you still have to do all the same stuff that the NCAA does, like all the bureaucracy. You have to like decide who's eligible or like what are the rules. You still have to duplicate all of that, but if you could pull it out and then make like rational decisions for everything else, I just think that would be better. But I don't know. And I think about like the basketball tournament has been this thing that's like kept everyone together and under one roof. But what is the future of college basketball? Like, I get sad thinking about that too, where like each year it feels like the window where it's the dominant thing is shrinking.
It's shrinking. But like I said at the top, what really fucking sucks about that is that at least with football, it's like self-inflicted wounds. Like football, if we wake up in 20 years and we're like, this sport sucks, how did we get here? Football did it to themselves. Like football is making all these decisions, is driving all these decisions. Yeah. Basketball is just along for the ride, and that part sucks to me because I'm like, it's you kind of have nothing to do with it. You're just struggling along, and you're like, we're in this stupid ass conference because our football team wanted to play. Like I don't know, we just kind of ended up here.
Like, here's a great example: UConn. So UConn goes into the American,
right,
and they're playing like they're going to Tulsa. Right? And Memphis and like those schools and UCF.
Yep.
And everyone's like, all right, like this is our league. And then you go back to the Big East. I was at the Garden the day that they did their presser about like coming back. It was so much of a celebration. Also, I got to meet Jonathan the Husky. Amazing. But it was like, this is where we belong.
Right.
And this is our identity. And this is what our fans want. This is what, and they do, because when UConn plays Villanova or St. John's or Georgetown, whatever, they play at the Garden, it's nuts because the regional piece and like the longstanding history matters to them. And this is tangentially related to like the UConn Big 12 conversation, because I think it depends, right? Is it like, here's the paycheck that is financial security, or do you run into exact same problems that you had when you left the Big East? But it's like, who are you? Like what do you want to be? And there's just been so few decisions that were driven by basketball. I remember there's like one question about like, so is the football team going to stay at FBS? They going to drop down, whatever. It just wasn't the main factor, because that's not what's as important to people. But it's like, well, what are you deciding your future is? How do you think you're going to do it? And it's complicated, but it just like, that was such a good example. I remember being so happy for the UConn people and the UConn fans when that move happened. because that mattered to them.
And now if they go to the Big 12,
they lose it all.
That's a tragedy.
But, and
they're going to make a shit ton of money. And I get that it makes sense for, the guys in the suits on UConn's campus. But like that is, it all just like coalesced to a perfect, UConn winning the national championship's one of the great stories.
Yes.
Just like that, the fact that all they've been through and their coach is suing them and Kevin, like the whole deal is like crazy. And they leave the Big East, they're back. They win the national championship, and now they're going to the Big 12. It'd be like, what the fuck? What just happened? We had it perfect.
And Dan Hurley literally was saying, like, I don't think we do this without going back to the Big East. Like, the teams that you play, the way that it draws for recruits or transfers, like, that stuff matters. So then to immediately go the other way would be like very much, here's what college sports is in 2023.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they're going to get the invite, but even the fact that we're having that conversation, like, geography doesn't matter. This stuff doesn't matter.
I'm going to throw some scenarios at you that feel various degrees of plausible, I guess we'll say. And you just tell me whatever thoughts you have, Nicole.
Okay.
You don't have to, you could say no comment, you could whatever, but like I said throughout this show, I just like to come up with like wild shit, and then you can just riff on it however you see fit.
Okay.
The idea of the SEC and or Big Ten just breaking away from the NCAA altogether. The idea of Greg Sankey being like, I'm more powerful than anyone. Why do I take orders from the NCAA? Why do we need the NCAA? Why don't I just run everything? And what are your thoughts on this?
So he has worked at all levels of college sports, and he has spent a ton of time on NCAA committees. He chaired the transformation committee, which was like a huge time suck. It was like 2 hours a week. They were the ones who like were looking at tournament expansion, but like all of these other issues around like what is a baseline experience for a college athlete. I just don't think that you spend all of that time and energy and devote your whole life to college athletics and then turn your back on it. And I think he believes in leading from within and like changing within. And he's obviously like one of the people who's gone to Congress and been like, hey, like we need help, like we need these things. And I think there's like, it sounds very like Pollyanna-ish to be like, there's true believers like who believe that this model like offers scholarships and opportunities to people who might not otherwise have had it. And I think he does believe those things.
Okay.
So I think he is more likely, and maybe this changes if you...
Well, my uncle told me he's evil. My uncle, who's a Big Ten guy, just said Greg Sankey's evil and the SEC's evil. So I was like, that's Uncle Ron. You make some great points.
Yeah, we can have him on the show next time. But my point is that I do think, and maybe you hit a point where you're just too frustrated and everything's moving too slowly. You're not able to get what you need. But I think right now, like, if you can change from within and try to save the enterprise that's being like under attack, then you try to do that. I think that's where he is right now.
Okay, that's comforting. The SEC adding a school north of the Mason-Dixon, because as much as the SEC has triggered this newest wave of realignment with Texas and Oklahoma, they're still like the map still makes sense. You look at the SEC school map, it still makes sense, and they're still like kind of tightly-ish. They're getting a little fatter here, but like it's
there's all of their states touch each other, right?
So the idea of like, I guess the question is, do you feel like the SEC regionality still matters, or like the map still matters to them, or like Oregon and Washington? If you're holding out for an SEC invite, I would say don't hold your breath.
I think the map still matters. I think that it's almost even come across as like a jab at the Big Ten in the last year about like, no, all of our states are like I'm not going to be able to say the word correctly. They all touch each other. They're all connected. Yeah. Like they all make sense geographically, and that is part of our identity. And so I do think that is something that is very important to them, and I would be surprised if that changes.
What about the idea of, I've kicked this around on the show as well in the past, Stanford and or Cal, just I don't know if it's dissolve football or dissolve, like, because I get the sense that those two schools like truly just don't care. And I got into an argument. Brandon Walker came on my show. He's one of the big dumb rednecks we have working here at Barstool. And we were talking about realignment a little bit. And I made the point to him that I was like, Stanford and Cal are two schools that, like, frankly, winning a football national championship doesn't seem to matter to them as much as like curing cancer. That's what they exist for as entities. And I feel like there's a world where they just like feel like they're above even all of they're just like, you peasants, go figure this out yourselves, and we're going to sit up here on our, for better or worse. Like that just seems to be like what they care about. Probably for better. It's probably for better.
Yeah,
it's probably for better.
Winning a national championship.
Or is it? I don't know.
Should we root for?
But like, yeah, the idea of like Stanford and Cal, like how much of a fight do you think they are putting up as schools in all of this, and how much of it do you think they're just like, we're Stanford and we're Cal?
I mean,
like,
I think that's a very real question, and Stanford cut a bunch of sports during the pandemic. And they do offer a lot. Like they are very good at a variety of Olympic sports. But when I was saying earlier, like, could you imagine a world where there's like two, maybe Division I's divided again or FBS divided again, and some people are like, we will spend whatever we need to spend. Like we know Georgia and Ohio State and those schools will, whatever the maximum is. Or if you're going to pay players and it's a different designation, but it's still tied to like college football or whatever, they will do it. I don't think that you could necessarily say that about Stanford and Cal. Like I do think if, you're looking 10 years out, 15 years out, whatever, and maybe there is, people are actually deciding which sports they're going to put money into, or they're going to be like, well, we're going to offer it, but it's more like a club sports experience where we're not competing at the absolute highest levels, but we're still offering scholarships. There could be a lot of schools that are like, A, we can't afford it, or B, we don't want to be that.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are valid questions for those schools. Yes.
All right. I got two more for you.
Can we talk about the Barbie movie?
Yeah, we can. We absolutely can. I saw it.
You saw it?
I did see it.
Good.
I did see it.
Good.
SEC or Big Ten kicking a school out to make like looking at their schools and being like, why do we have? What the hell is Rutgers doing here? Well, if we got rid of Rutgers, I'd make room for these two. Do you think there's a world where they ever kick schools out?
Because you're saying ever, I would say I guess there's always a possibility.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if that happens. I know it's happened historically. Like teams have gotten kicked out of leagues, and I know that you could say like, Vanderbilt football is not carrying their weight. I just think that would be...
It's a terrible precedent.
Terrible precedent, and so against what they all say college sports is supposed to be.
Lastly, a New Year's Six bowl, just poof. Just like the like where do we stand with the bowls? Like the bowls, they're trying to preserve them. Why are we trying to keep this dinosaur on life support?
Well, you're talking like you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I think that we should have more games on campus.
Yeah.
I don't think the first round of the playoff game is going to be enough. I think the quarters should also be on campus. And if you have to go to bowl sites for the semifinals and the championship, fine. But I just think like that's why we love college football. Like it's the energy, it's the bands, it's the cheerleaders. It's like being in the college town. And also in the way that the playoffs getting set up, if you're one of the top 4 teams and you get a bye, you don't get a home game.
That's so stupid.
Instead of getting rewarded like that, where your season ticket holders and your local businesses get it, you're literally like, oh, hey fans, you got to travel 3 times now in the next 3 weeks. And
that really frustrates me, but also it's nice because I have been arguing forever that if Bama had to come up and play Big Ten teams in December, they would get worked, and I don't want to actually get called on that. I don't want my bluff called.
Well,
it's a lot easier to just say they would get worked than to actually like have to go out and beat them.
They could still get there if they're like a 9 through 12 seed. They could still get sent up north.
Yeah, but I don't want that. Like, and then it's a lot easier, Nicole, to say if Bama was to play Ohio State in December, we would wreck them. Yeah, but then when I turn on the TV and Bama is coming out of Ohio Stadium, I'm gonna go. Yeah, fuck, what have I done?
What if then Ohio State wins? Then you're just like perpetual.
That's a good point.
Rights.
That's a good point. Then I could say, give us all those national championships in the past. We would have won.
The transitive property.
We would have won all of these had we not have to play. Why do we have to play LSU in New Orleans every single time? Every time LSU's playing for a national championship, Ohio State's in New Orleans getting their asses beat by LSU. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Not every time, but we've lost to. It's happened before.
Yeah, but also 2014 was in.
No, was it?
That was Alabama.
We played.
That was the semi.
Yeah, we played and we beat Alabama. That's a good point.
I was at that one. That was in their back.
But we played Georgia in the Peach Bowl. We play LSU in the Sugar Bowl. We play. It's like
venues are all down there.
I know it's fucking annoying. It's annoying. I just want can Georgia play? Can we play in Cleveland? Let's just play one game in Cleveland. Anyway, that's enough. I'm gonna get fired up. Anyway, what else? You want to talk about the Barbie movie?
I do, actually.
I liked it.
I saw it twice already.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just as funny the second time.
How much do you like it? Like, give me like is this like life changing? Like it? Is this
I think it's cultural,
an enjoyable romp.
I think it is somewhere between there.
Okay.
No, I think it's I mean, I went the first time, like bought tickets just for the memes. Like I knew.
Did you do the pink?
I did wear pink. Okay. Yeah. Didn't know they were gonna have that life-size like Barbie box to take photos in.
Oh, they did? No, we didn't have that at my theater.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they had that. But I went just for the memes because like I just thought it was gonna be a thing, right? And then I was like, oh, this is actually a real movie. Like hit on real topics, and then also was way funnier than I thought it was going to be. And I was near tears when Ryan Gosling was doing the guitar part.
Yeah, that was great.
Like I was near tears.
Gosling killed it, I thought.
He was so good. I hope he wins an Emmy for it.
Yeah, is it okay for an Oscar, right?
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, Oscar.
That would be wild if he won an Emmy though. That would be pretty wild. I want him to win
an Oscar and also get that song nominated.
Yeah, he could maybe get something. Yeah, I feel like that was kind of, I don't know, Nicole, is it problematic to say, but like I walked out of the theater and I was like, I think the dude killed the Barbie movie. I think I think the guy. No, I think the person who stole the show was the guy. Well, was the guy. I think it was.
It was like all the reviews were like about how great the movie was and that Ryan Gosling was the star of it. And I was like, 10?
I was like, yeah, I think.
But this is what I think the movie did well. Like that is how you, as a child, as a girl who played with Barbies, Ken did suck. He was just sucked.
There. Yeah.
They nailed that.
I would play Barbies with my sister, and I would play with Ken as she was playing with Barbie. And I was like, what do I do with this? Like, what am I? I just hold it. I'll just hold it right here. Yeah, it was very funny. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Even like obviously it's like they're making fun of men in a lot of ways, and I don't know. There was a lot of like that's me. That's like, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, that's funny. That's me. And I don't know. It's weird. The dudes seem to like be offended. I don't know. Like people like see themselves like being made fun of and they get mad. I do the opposite. I'm like, I do that. I went with my girlfriend and I just turned her. I was like, that's me. I fucking do that.
I actually thought that like they did it in a very nice way. Like it was so obvious satire about that stuff and about like the horses.
Yeah, it wasn't. They weren't trying to make like a kill shot. It wasn't like let's tear down the page. It was just kind of like let's take a few jabs and have some fun. I thought it was great. I thought it was very funny. Before I let you go, we have to talk Michigan, Ohio State. You are. You're a Michigan person.
Yes.
So
proud of you for not bringing that up sooner.
Where's Michigan at going into this season? Where's the expectation? Is
very high
because on the one hand, like you own Ohio State, you finally get over the hump, you own the Big Ten, but also the TCU has to be like that taste has to be just a terrible taste in the mouth of Michigan fans. And there's like real expectations between the schedule, like Ohio State quarterback situation. Like Ohio State probably won't be as good as they were last year, but maybe they will. I don't know. We'll see. Like the time is now for Michigan. So like the expectation through the roof. Michigan can't. Like Michigan can't fuck this up, Nicole. Like there's an unbelievable amount of pressure on Michigan going into this season.
Yeah, but I also think that they are the best version that they've been.
What could go wrong?
Well, Jim Harbaugh's been suspended, or will likely be suspended.
What did he do? Was it worse than Tressel or not? That's all I want to know. Was what Jim Harbaugh did?
Listen, I said this to you earlier, but the key is breaking NCAA rules when no one likes the NCAA or cares about them anymore, versus like when they're in the peak of their powers. And people get really worked up over tattoos. No, so the reason he's going to get the punishment he's getting is because he wasn't forthcoming and didn't apologize for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the NCAA is looking for now is, like, cooperation.
Just kiss the ring, yeah.
Yeah, and also, like, they don't want to punish teams. Like, they're really trying not to do postseason bans and things that, like, impact actual players who had nothing to do with it. But...
Good for you guys.
Again, you should pick your timing better on
I miss Jim Tressel so much. I love Jim Tressel.
That was a wild one because it's funny. Like, it wasn't that long ago, and you look back and read like the coverage at the time, and it's like
scathing.
Yeah, because people really acted like breaking an NCAA rule was breaking the law, and that it was like this moral failing of every single person. Like, it was a crazy time.
My first ever dealing with Ohio State fans, or the first time I ever felt like, oh shit, I understood like how media works was I wrote on my blog. I was just like riffing on my blog, writing nonsense, and I was writing about I wasn't even writing to be like a journalist. I was just kind of like saying whatever I saw. And like someone had wrote in and asked me like, do you think the football players got free cars? And I was like, I remember writing like, I don't fucking know if they got free cars or not, but if you just drive by the Woody, like everyone's driving some pimped out cars. It's pretty crazy. And ESPN aggregated me and I was getting death threats like crazy. And I just look back on that. I'm like, what an insane time to like that. This was a time where, I don't know. It was like, I don't know. The idea of it now is preposterous, but that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, but I do.
Anyway.
Back to the Michigan point. I think expectations are very high. I think that,
That's
when
good.
Blake Corum came back, you still have Donovan Edwards, still have J.J. McCarthy. They do need to stretch the field vertically and actually develop that part of the offense, but they're going to be really good. And I'm fascinated about Ohio State because making the playoff, getting in through the back door was huge, right? Because you were toe-to-toe with Georgia. Like, Ohio State's built to compete with the teams that win national championships. Michigan is still built differently, which is part of the reason that they've beaten Ohio State the last 2 years, the way that they've beaten them. So that's still the question. Like, can you win a playoff game? Like, can you actually contend for a national championship? But for Ohio State, it's like, you can't lose twice in a row to Michigan. You just can't do that. And I saw people being like, "Is Ryan Day on the hot seat?" This is the only.
Oh, I fired him. I personally fired him.
I think
I fired him.
That is a realistic reaction from Ohio State fans in that circumstance. You can win every other game, but that's the game.
It wasn't just we lost it. It was like because at halftime you're like, we're clearly the better team, and I don't mean we don't need to go through it again. But I just like that was the Ohio State perspective. Like at halftime you're like, all right, so we got better athletes. We're gonna they have a quarterback that can't throw the ball. We're gonna fucking blow this thing open, and we're gonna run them off the field. And then we come out in the second half and we're dinking and dunking wide receiver screens, and everyone's losing their mind. And then all of a sudden Michigan's bombing it downfield on. So like, what has happened? Yeah. So I think it was like not just that they lost. It was that like the way it just kind of unraveled. You're like, how is this happening?
Like how physical Michigan's been in those games last year. Like it's all the stuff that like you just don't want to lose to your hated rival that way. Yeah,
I think I've said this before, but I think Ohio State, as you said, is built to win national championships. Michigan is right now is a freaking machine built to win the Big Ten. And they're just at odds with each other. And I think like it's going to happen again. I think both teams are going to make the playoffs again. I think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten. Well, because Ohio State isn't built for late November Big Ten weather. We're built to like try to compete with Georgia, which we can do better than Michigan, I think. Right. It's such a weird sport.
No,
That's such a weird sport because I think
it's kind of like it's a little bit like basketball where it's like Purdue and Virginia.
Yeah, Purdue. Yeah,
man, they can have these great regular.
It's going to happen it's going to happen with Big Ten and basketball where Purdue is going to win the Big Ten this year, but we're going to go into the tournament. And you're going to say if you have to pick a Big Ten team to win it all, everyone's going to say Michigan State. Everyone's going to be like Michigan State's the only team.
Last year was a team that like I was more like, well, actually their style of play and like maybe the way they did it, right? But it's kind of the same thing, and it's weird. But people say styles make fights for a reason because it does. Anyway, excited for 3 in a row. So
no,
we will
disgusting.
We'll definitely be chatting.
Maybe Ohio State will fake COVID like Michigan did and get out of the game.
See, that was actually the one year where they should have moved the game. Like that's actually. Do you see Ryan Day said that they should consider moving the game?
I hate that. I hate that.
But the one year that they should have done that was the COVID year. Because then you had the entire rest of the season to make it up, and they didn't do that.
People forget Jim Harbaugh would have been fired if he didn't fake COVID. And he would have gone into Columbus and got his ass handed to him, and then Michigan probably would have fired him. And then I'm not bitter though, Nicole. I'm not bitter. I'm fine with it. I'm at a good place with it all. Thank you for coming in and making time for us. This was fun. We'll have to do it again. Now that I live in Chicago, you're Chicago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're a Chicago resident. Neighbors. We're basically neighbors now, so we'll have to do it again.
Anytime.
Quick break to talk about our friends at Coors Light. Everyone thinks about the day they'll eventually get to retire and enjoy all the freedom that comes with it. But who says we have to wait decades before we get to kick back and chill out? Take advantage of that free will and spend the summer chilling out like a retiree and pair those moments with Coors Light, the beer that's made to chill. Enjoy your temporary retirement era with Coors Light. It is the beer that is literally made to chill. It pairs well with the retired state of mind, and it also pairs well, I will say, with this run that the Chicago Cubs are on. I've been going to this dive bar around the corner. I've been talking about it a little bit on the show. The Mike Tauchman robbery of the St. Louis Cardinals on the final swing of the bat the other night was absolutely freaking electric, and it was made possible in my mind by the Coors Light I was holding in my hand. I was at this dive bar throwing back the Coors Lights. The Cubs win on a robbed homer. Everyone's going crazy. I found my people, TJ, is what I'm saying in Chicago. You love the Cubs and you love the mountains turning blue. I love you. That's all it takes. The mountains on the bottles and cans turn blue when your beer is cold, so you know when it's time to grab another. Perfect for all your summer plans or lack thereof. No judgment here. This summer, chill like you're retired with Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/Titus. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right. Thank you to Nicole Auerbach for making time for us. It's devastating, TJ, to be an Ohio State fan. It just dawned on me in that moment that Michigan and Ohio State, the game got brought up. It's a very new. These are new waters for me. I'll just say that. Like I didn't grow up an Ohio State fan. I didn't really care about Ohio State versus Michigan football until I went to school there. And like pretty much as soon as I got to campus, we started beating the hell out of Michigan every single year. So I've never really lived in a world. I've literally never seen Michigan beat Ohio State twice. And my brain just short-circuited because I'm sitting across from Nicole trying to talk shit about Michigan, Ohio State. And then I realized, like, what do? I've never been in this position before where the Michigan fans have such an upper hand. And that was uncomfortable, and I didn't like it, and I hate it. And Ryan Day, goddamn it, please win this year. That's all I'm going to say. So there's that. But yeah, that was fun. That was Nicole is great, and I don't know. The conference realignment thing is I kind of touched on it, but it's like with her that just the sentiment of like we're all losing our minds about it, but it is kind of like a constant that's gone on. And I mean, You're a Rutgers fan, you know this. Rutgers has been in.
Yeah, we bounced around a little bit, and I mean, you guys mentioned us more than I'd like to hear in the average interview about people.
No, Rutgers is good. I mentioned Rutgers specifically about what if the Big Ten would kick out Rutgers. She said no, Rutgers is good. So there you go. I do think you're fine.
We breached through the point where we're now good because like our TV contract expands. And they're like the argument that we bring in the New York market is the dumbest thing ever, but it is like logistically speaking, that is true. That like they can claim New York as part of their market because of Rutgers, which yippee, I guess. Like it's not like there's fans lining the streets. It's not really a college football city, but yeah, it's great. Like Jack Mack had a scoop the other day. I don't know, you guys didn't bring it up directly, but.
I was going to bring it up. I had
Florida
seen it as well,
and Clemson and Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten this week. It's crazy. I don't really. I guess my question is, what's the end game for all of this? Like, is it one conference or is it two conferences? Because like
that's the
really conferences. What's the point of having a conference if Rutgers has to go to Eugene, Oregon once every other year?
Right. Yeah. Nicole is the big J, so she's a little more grounded and deals with real like. She deals with real evidence put in front of her, which is like talking to people and hearing what they're saying and all this sort of thing. I am not. I just sit in my room at home and I'm like, all right, so here's the situation. We're going to have 50 fucking teams in the Big Ten. We're going to have 50 teams in the SEC.
Yeah.
Pac-12, see ya. ACC, see ya. That seems to be the end game to me. As it feels like I think the Big 12 is fine. I mean, not just because Colorado's coming. The Dan Lanning quote was amazing. Right before we sat down, I saw Dan Lanning was like, "Colorado's won nothing. Colorado's won nothing. Why are we freaking out that we lost Colorado?" I don't think the Big 12. I don't think that like bolsters the Big 12 per se, other than just like. I think the Big 12's attitude right now is they'll take whoever they can get, like that's of a certain stature. I think the Big 12 is going to be fine. It is obviously going to be the SEC and the Big 10, but the Big 12 will be a nice third option. I don't see a world where the Pac-12 is right because I think that Cal and Stanford will. What I said to Nicole, I think they don't care. I don't think they're going to put up any sort of fight whatsoever. I think they're just like, put us out of our misery. We'll go cure cancer and, do science. What do you do with science? What is science anyway? What is you just doing science? Shit. Just nerd shit? They're just like, we're just going to go do some nerd shit. I do think the Pac-12 is in trouble, but it does feel like that's where we're headed. We touched on it a little bit, but like the idea of like the West Coast not really having a power conference is wild to me. The idea that like the West Coast we're probably going to live in a world where just there's like no power conference on the West Coast. Just all the West Coast schools have been stripped for parts and distributed amongst the rest of the country. It's crazy, but that's the world we live in. And yeah, it is funny to sit here and pretend like this never happens in college sports, even though this has been going on forever. But still, this time it's different. It is loud as hell outside, by the way. I don't know what's going on in the studio. I don't know who we brought in, but I don't know if like White Sox Dave is like trying to wrestle somebody or what's going on. But sorry if I'm a little distracted.
How has it been acclimating to that environment? I saw you guys throwing the ball outside.
Oh yeah, we tossed me and Brandon and Dave were just tossing the pigskin as guys do out in the alleyway. It's been cool. I've enjoyed it so far. I'm still trying to figure out Dave a little bit. You know, like I thought they are screaming. I don't know what the hell's going on out there. They're literally. I'm going to keep it rolling. I want to go see what the fuck's going on. This is insane.
Mark is getting up and walking to the front of the room. I can't hear anything through his mic on my end. I don't know if that's a Zoom or not, but I know last week there was heavy construction audio in that office. This week just screaming, apparently.
No, it's loud as fuck.
Returning to the chair
it's
now.
Fine. We're rolling still, so it's fine. Yeah, we're good. It's just it was a fact-finding mission. It was not a complaint. I was just seeing what was going on. I wasn't trying to. So I went out there and I just popped my head out and I didn't say a word. I wasn't like shut the fuck up, everybody. I was just like, what is this? I got to see what this is. And then they must have interpreted that as me, being passive aggressive. There are like 3 or 4. I can only describe them as like influencer types. They just look like I don't know how else to describe them. I have to get used to this with Barstool, TJ, of just like people coming into the office, so you're not really sure who they are, but they just like bring a whirlwind of energy. I don't know who they are. It just looked like 3 or 4 dudes that are probably popular on TikTok or something. That's the way I would describe them. Yeah. And they're mixing it up with the Chicago and some of the producers and stuff. I don't know who did they must have like talked with Eddie and they, like I don't know, did they go on the dog walk or something? I don't know what the hell is going on here. This is new for me, so I enjoy working out of this office. This is a small office here in Chicago, I will say. Yeah. We have small digs until the new place is being built, so there is that. But anyway, that was crazy. I think that's. Do we have shout outs? Anything else? Any other shout outs?
Shout out to you and Brandon. You guys went to the National Card Convention or the Sports and Memorabilia show last week. The video came out today. Yeah.
I had no idea that this was a thing. I really didn't. I would have assumed that there was a convention where people did this, but I never knew. I never really paid much attention to it. Brandon texted me, hey, do you want to go to this? I thought it was in Chicago every year. It turns out it's not. They move it around. It just happened to be in Chicago this year. And he's like, hey, do you want to go to this and try to find something for our set? I said, sure, thinking it was going to be like a small high school cafeteria having like a glorified yard sale,
Yeah.
It was definitely not that. It was a convention center of just like packed to the brim of just like the wildest shit. I was blown away. It actually in the end won me over because they had a lot of cool stuff there. They had a lot of really cool things, and I couldn't believe how expensive some of the things were. But yeah, it was cool. I would recommend going if it's coming to your city next year or the year after or whatever. The National Sports Collectors Convention, I think it's what it's called.
It's referred to as just the National.
Oh, the National
in the community. That's what they call it.
All right, so if the National comes your way, I would recommend it. It's worth like even if you don't collect any, because I don't collect stuff like that. I don't care that much about collecting. The idea of like having Mike Trout's first MLB game ticket is of no interest to me. If you gave it to me for free, I would just be like, thanks, I guess. And I don't even know if I would. I might just throw it away. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't now. Now that I know it's worth $9,000, I wouldn't. But so my brain's just not really wired that way. So I didn't really know what to expect. And then I got there and I was like, this is really cool, even for someone like me who doesn't really collect stuff. But That's pretty crazy. I actually bumped into a couple people I knew and talked to them. We ran into it got cut, but we ran into Jake Marsh's dad. He was there. Yeah,
interesting.
That was funny. Yeah, he said that he was looking for, if I remember correctly, he goes, this convention kind of sucks this year, and we're like, whoa, why does it suck? And he goes, they don't have what I want. We said, well, what do you want? And he goes, I'm looking for bases from like the 1960s or 1970s. And we're like, oh yeah, of course. I think that section was over there. The MLB bases from 1970.
Yeah.
So he went with a very specific thing in mind, and couldn't find it and was disappointed. But no, it was cool. Go watch the video. I thought the video turned out well too. Shout out Zoopy for editing it. It was pretty good for Brandon. It was Brandon's stupid idea, and I didn't really have high hopes. And I showed up and I was like, this thing does not seem fun at all. And then it ended up being fun, and the video turned out well. So Brandon's a visionary.
Yeah.
Well,
I usually feel like, I guess, a big dumb idiot for gassing Brandon up for no reason, because it goes straight to his head, and then he like turns into like a god complex type character. But I thought the video was great. Like I don't know, I wasn't even expecting. You texted me on Thursday and said we're going to this thing. I didn't even know that there was a video coming out of it, and then I got the video on Friday, and I was like, Brandon doesn't normally mesh well with other, like he doesn't play well with other kids. But you guys, I mean, everything's been good so far. I keep getting excited about this new thing that we keep teasing.
It also got cut from the video, but in the end, I bought that Dale Earnhardt mug. That was that didn't get cut, but I bought a mug for $5. So we asked the guy, because Brandon bought his thing first, and then I had the $10 bill on me. I really did not expect. I probably should have brought more money, but I didn't expect anything to really cost that. When we walked in and I saw things for like $15,000, I was like, oh my god, I had no idea what I stepped into. But I really went with $10 cash, and I really thought I'd be able to find some good stuff for $10. Like that's what I thought I was going to. I thought it was like a garage sale. So Brandon buys his thing first. He puts pressure on me. He's like, you have to buy one thing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to get for $10. We're walking around this table that has all this piddly shit. I find the Dale Earnhardt mug, and I lose my mind. I'm like, oh my god, this thing is awesome. And I asked the guy, how much for this? And he says $5. And I shit you not, TJ, I thought he meant 500. I was like, damn. I guess it is a pretty sick mug. I was like, that's good. And then Brandon's like, hold on. Do you mean 5 or do you mean 500? And he's like, and the guy started laughing. He's like, $5. Like, why would I mean 500? And I was like, wait, no shit. So I had collector brain by the end of it, where I just assumed everything was like $500. I just like, the fact that they had this mug just sitting there for $5, I was very, very happy. So
Did you guys get to see Darren Ravel's exhibit?
No, I actually was looking for it though. I was walking around because I had heard that he was there with his exhibit, and I was he selling stuff, or was he just?
I think he was just showing off.
Yeah, it feels like a Rovell move to just take his collection and just like post up and flex and just say like,
some of the
none
stuff
of this is for sale.
Is cool, like having like the vest from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's pretty cool, but some of it is like the most random celebrity merch, or like tickets from like random games that he didn't go to, where I'm like, I guess that this is valuable because you paid for it, but like a ticket to a game that you didn't go to, that you don't care about, like, or like he had like Bruce Springsteen's health insurance card. I'm like, how did you even get this? And also, why do you want it? Like, what's the?
He had that was when he got didn't he get the sign-in book to like when MLK was. Or was it Rosa Parks?
He has like receipts from like
put in prison or
like
something.
A bar, or like from like a jail like receipt that like MLK signed or something. I'm like, oh, that's cool, I guess. Like that contributes to his over 9 pieces of MLK signed memorabilia that he brags about on Twitter.
I don't understand the ticket if you didn't go to the game. I mean, that part was weird to me. That's what I said about the Mike. If you would have handed me the Mike Trout ticket before I'd gone to this convention, I would have thrown it away. I just would have been like, yeah, that's cool that you have it, man. Like I'm not going to do anything with it. Are you sure you don't want to keep it? Like I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But now
that's one of my great gripes with modern society. Like you and PFT talked about QR code menus is digital tickets.
Yeah.
Because I have probably 90% of the physical tickets of events I've ever gone to.
Oh, that's
back
awesome.
to when I was like 5 or 6.
Dude,
like
sell them,
2002 or 3.
Get them ready to take to the national, dude. You can clean up. That's what I learned because I have LeBron. I have a ticket to LeBron's last game in Cleveland when they got swept by the Warriors, Game 4. I went to that finals game, and I remember thinking that might be his last game. I should hold on to the ticket. I don't know why. I don't collect anything. I threw it in my junk drawer in my kitchen. I was just like, I'm going to throw this ticket in here. I don't want to throw it away, but I'm just going to hold on to it. Now I'm thinking I should take it back to the national convention and get.
Yeah.
You get $5,000 for that? I don't know. I don't know how much money you get for that. Maybe that.
It's a lost medium now. There's no more physical tickets.
It's crazy. I also had like a thought of like if you wanted to rob that place, like what are you robbing? Like what's the? My mind went there, where I was like, what's the Ocean's 11 of the National Sports Collectors Convention?
You don't go after the diamonds. You go after the chandelier. That's priceless.
Yeah,
priceless.
I go after like a baseball glove. I go after the bases from the 1970s or some glove that, some bat signed by Pete Rose. Yeah, that was fun. Go watch the video. Brandon will cry if you don't, so please go do that. What else? Any other shout outs? I saw Barbie and Oppenheimer. Nicole and I talked about Barbie, obviously. I really did enjoy Barbie a lot. Oppenheimer fucking ruled. Oppenheimer was awesome. It was a little long. I had to piss. That sucks. There's nothing worse than that I don't want to be the guy that complains about it being too long because that sounds like I was bored by it. I was not. I was very into it. But TJ, I took every precaution possible. I pissed right when I got to the theater. I pissed. This theater waited like 10 minutes to start the previews even. So like even it was supposed to start at, say it was supposed to start at 7. It was like 7:14 when the previews even started. So like I'm through like 15 minutes of previews and I was like, you know what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go piss again. I'm going to be proactive about this. But I think I did like the break the seal deal where I just got into a habit of like pissing every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes. So at the end of Oppenheimer, I'm like, and the ending was awesome. The ending of Oppenheimer was fucking, like the whole movie was great. But, oh God, I had to piss so bad and I don't want to leave. And I don't know. It was very frustrating. So I'd love to see it again. Maybe this time I'll go piss in the middle of it because I've already seen it. But I really, really enjoyed Oppenheimer. But I did it. I did the Barbenheimer double, as they say. I went to Barbie in the morning and Oppenheimer later that night. I didn't do like a true like stay at the theater all at once type deal. Yeah. So anyway.
I don't know if I'm built for that. I haven't seen a movie since I worked at a movie theater. Like I haven't been to a theater since I worked at one, just because I wasn't even scarred from it. I was just exhausted by the concept. But there was a good 5 or 6 year stretch when I was growing up where I didn't make it through a single movie without falling asleep for an hour of it. I was just wasting my parents' money essentially or my own money going to a movie.
Dude, this is a series you should do for Barstool is like go to premieres for movies and try to fall asleep. You try.
I mean, it's the ultimate sleeping environment. It's dark. It's like a big comfy chair, like snacks. That's where I want to be asleep most of the time.
TJ goes
like ignoring the gigantic speaker system and like explosions and the huge flashing screen.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you could have gone to the Barbie premiere on the night it came out and fallen asleep, that's impressive. Yeah. With all the I imagine a lot of laughing and there was laughing in my theater at least. Yeah, that would or even Oppenheimer. Yeah, that's a great series. I would watch that series.
I had to see The Dark Knight Rises 3 times before I figured out what. It was a problem. I'll admit it. I was pissed off every time too. I wasn't
Oppenheimer.
To wake up.
You might want to wait till Oppenheimer comes out on streaming, and you can just pause it in the comfort of your own home and watch it over the course of 5 days.
Yeah,
chip away at it. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think I have any. I don't have any more shout outs. Is that it for you? Are you done?
I'm 24 hours into 48 hours with no phone case, and I haven't broken it yet. So
yeah, it's liberating, dude. I've been team no case for a while, and I have broken mine, and I'm at a point now where I just don't think I would care. Like I broke it like I was in Maui actually. I dropped it in Maui. It wasn't even my fault. It was. Don't need to get into it, but I'm getting out of a cab as I got to an airport. And the guy was pulling my bag and was kind of rushing me out of the cab, and my phone falls off the seat and hits the ground. and I pick it up and it was cracked, and I was so fucking mad because like that's the thing. If you go no case, TJ, everyone's like, what happens if you drop it? And I would always look him in the eye and I would say, I just don't drop it. Like I just simply do not drop it. And now I have a cracked phone, but it's like not my fault technically because it was like this other dude. I guess it is your fault. I guess that's how it works. Like I have to be more protective of my things, but like I felt like it was this other guy's fault. But long story short, like the second it cracked, I was like, I have to immediately, I started like looking up, I was like, should I move my flight? Cause I can go to Apple Store in Maui and get a new phone. I have to get the new phone immediately. We have to get this fixed. And that was like, I don't know. That was what, 7-8 months ago. And I just don't care. So I don't know. I don't know.
I drop my phone a lot in my sleep. So I don't know if I can like I'll hit the snooze button with my eyes closed and just yank the phone off of my dresser.
Oh no!
Like here, wake up to it hitting the ground. Be like, ugh.
I was trying to encourage you. I was trying to encourage you just to say that if you do drop it, it's not the end of the world. Because I thought a cracked screen would be the worst thing ever. And as it turns out, I don't know. I was like, I don't really care that much. It's the inconvenience of having a cracked screen is less than the inconvenience of having to go to an Apple store and have the dorks that work at Apple like, hey, welcome in. How can we help you today? And I guess I could buy one online, but I don't want to.
The Apple store has been ruined since the pandemic.
Oh my God, dude.
You have to make an appointment to go to the Apple store to like buy a phone case now. I'm like, you have to like wait 45 minutes in line to buy a charger.
And I know everyone listening is like, why don't you just buy one online? And the answer is, did you not hear me and PFT bitching about how we're old men? I want to go, I want to hand currency over, and I want to take my product home with me. Okay. I need to hold the phone in my hand before I buy it. I don't want to just buy one online. I don't know. That's just something about me. So,
sometimes I like going to the mall too. There's something liberating about walking around a bunch of stores inside.
What's your go-to? It's still July. The calendar turns to August. We got to get a little more serious once we get to August. We can't have fun on the podcast anymore.
Right.
But while it's still July and we're here, what's your go-to store when you go to the mall? You're 16 years old. You just got dropped off at the mall. What's like the store you're like, I gotta make sure I swing by this store before?
It's always a stop in the GameStop, obviously.
GameStop.
I don't know. I like a good toy store. Those are kind of gone. But anywhere where I can look at stuff and poke around at stuff and be like, hey, should I buy this? Probably not, but
I would always go to Finish Line, and then I could never afford like new shoes, but I was always just like look at what the cool kids had, and I'm like, oh, that's sick, dude. Those sneakers.
Maybe try a pair on and do a lap around the store just to see how it feels.
Yeah. And then Spencer Gifts, obviously. You got to go to Spencer Gifts when you're in high school, and you got to just look at the sex
into the back,
the sex dice, and the oh my God,
penis ice tray. Should we get this?
This shirt says 420. Did you see this? This is crazy. Holy shit, that's the weed number. All right, that's the show. Thank you to Nicole Auerbach for coming on. Thank you to you guys for listening and watching. We will be back on Thursday. See ya.